You know, right now, I can practically guarantee you are within arm's reach of something made by this one company. Seriously. It's like an invisible empire that lives right inside our homes. And what's wild is that for almost 200 years, it didn't just sell stuff. It pretty much wrote the rulebook for modern business.
Just think about the brands you see and trust every single day. The icons like Tide or Pampers, which, let's be honest, completely changed the game for parents everywhere.
And of course, Gillette, a total giant in its own rights. So what's the thread that ties all these together? Well, they're all owned by Procter& Gamble. And it all started back in 1837 with a candle maker and a soap maker. Their story, well, it's one of the most fascinating you'll ever hear in the world of business. So P&G's story doesn't start in some big economic boom. Oh no, it starts in a bust. The company was founded in Cincinnati during the Panic of 1837, which was one of America's first huge financial crises. They managed to survive by making things people truly couldn't live without. The partnership between William Procter and James Gamble, it was actually their father-in-law's idea. Yep, they married sisters. But their real big break came during the Civil War. They got these massive contracts to supply the Union Army, so their products ended up in the hands of soldiers from all over the country. And when the war was over, those soldiers went home, and they took their loyalty to those brands with them. It perfectly set the stage for P&G's first smash hit. This tagline is just legendary. But back in 1879, it wasn't just some clever marketing slogan. No way. Harley Procter, one of the founder's sons, actually hired chemists to analyze the soap. This made it one of the very first advertising claims in history to be backed by actual science. Talk about building trust. It was completely unheard of at the time. Okay, you have to hear this. For decades, the story everyone told was that Ivory soap floated because of a happy accident. Some factory worker supposedly left a machine on too long, whipped air into the soap, and bam, floating soap. But the real story, which they found in the company archives, is so much cooler. Turns out, the founder's son, James N. Gamble, was a chemist, and in his notebook from 1863, he literally wrote, "I made floating soap today." It was a deliberate, brilliant piece of science. Think about it. People were bathing in murky river water back then. Losing your bar of soap was a real problem. This was genius. Now, if you think floating soap was a big idea, P&G's next innovation was even bigger. It was revolutionary. They didn't just invent new products, they basically invented the entire playbook for how to sell them. A playbook that, I kid you not, is still used by just about every major company on the planet. So, by the 1930s, P&G had a weird problem. Its own soap brands, like Ivory and Camay, were actually fighting each other for customers. To solve this mess, they came up with something totally new: brand management. It all started in 1931 with a 3-page memo from a junior marketing guy named Neil McElroy. His idea was simple but radical. Assign one person, a brand man, to be totally responsible for a single brand. Their only job? Make that brand win, period. That little memo created the entire field of brand management. And that junior employee, McElroy, he eventually became CEO of P&G and later the US Secretary of Defense. Not bad. And this is just brilliant. Ever wonder why they're called soap operas? Well, it's because P&G literally invented them. In the 1930s, they started creating and producing these dramatic serials for the radio with one goal: to sell soap to housewives. They sponsored the shows, and the name just stuck. They were masters of content marketing, like 80 years before it was even a thing. All right, let's fast forward to the 2010s. After decades and decades of nonstop growth, P&G was facing a brand new crisis. It had just gotten too big, too complex, too slow. It was basically drowning in its own success. Just look at that number, over 220 different brands. It was a mess. Management was stretched thin, marketing money was spread out all over the place, and dozens of these little brands had no real shot at being number one. The whole company was just stuck. So in 2014, the CEO, A.G. Lafley, made one of the boldest moves in modern corporate history. He got up and announced that P&G was going to sell, shut down, or get rid of more than 100 of its brands. They were going to shrink the whole company down to just 65 core brands. And when you look at the math, it's so simple, but so powerful. Those 65 core brands, they were bringing in 95% of the company's profits.
all those other 100-plus brands were sucking up time, money, and energy for just 5% of the profit. By cutting them loose, P&G could finally focus all its firepower on the brands that really, truly mattered.
This whole great shrink created the P&G we see today, a company that's way leaner, faster, and more focused. So what's their game plan to stay on top for the next 100 years? Well, their strategy now is super clear and disciplined. They're going all in on e-commerce, using AI to make their supply chain smarter and faster than ever. They're also turning sustainability into a real competitive advantage, not just some slogan on a poster. And maybe most important of all, that big brand review isn't a one-time thing anymore. It's now a permanent part of how they do business to make sure they always stay focused on what they do best. So we end with this question. P&G's most powerful lesson from its nearly 200-year history wasn't about adding more stuff. It was about the incredible power of subtraction. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? In our own work, in our businesses, or even just in our lives, what are the non-essential things we're holding on to? And what kind of amazing focus and growth could we unlock if we just had the courage to let them go?